It is 6 o'clock on Tuesday, January 24th. I'll call the study session to order, and we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so for the study session, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
And I assume that any communications we can take during the regular meeting.
That's correct.
Okay. Have we heard from, I have not heard from Mr. Jager.
Neither have I. I talked to him earlier today, but as far as I know, he was planning to be here.
Okay, so, well, maybe he's just running a couple minutes late. And if something happened, then we can excuse him. So at this time, we will move into executive session for the performance of a public employee. We will be in executive session with no action taken for let's call it 50 minutes. So 6:51 will come out of executive session with no action taken, and then we'll take a little break and move on to the regular meeting. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so it is 6:53. We are coming out of executive session. There will be no action taken. And so we will adjourn the study session for the next 6 minutes, and we'll reconvene the regular school board meeting at 7 p.m. Thank you. Okay, it is 7 o'clock on January 24th. Welcome to the school board meeting. We will call the meeting to order, and we'll start by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Okay, changes to the agenda this evening.
No changes.
Okay. Communications.
All right, first we have a response to public comment. So at the school board meeting on January 10th, students, parents, and a staff member expressed concern about the process for senior photos for the high school yearbook. The next day, January 11th, an apology to all families was sent by the superintendent via email. An apology to all seniors and their parents was sent by the high school principal via email. Picture retakes took place on January 18th. For the retakes, students were allowed to wear their choice of attire. The district would like to take this opportunity via response to public comment to apologize again for the process. The intent was to provide students a nice professional photo for the yearbook. The process was flawed and made many students uncomfortable. That was not the intent, and the district apologizes for this.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say one other piece relative to that. This afternoon, I know all of the school board members received, I don't know, about 24 emails this afternoon from students at the high school that were very nice. And I haven't had a chance to acknowledge them, but I want to acknowledge them here that their kind words are appreciated, and it was very thoughtful of them to reach out to the school board. So thank you to those students that reached out to us.
All right, next for communications, we have recognition for School Board Appreciation Month. We'd like to call forward some students from our mid-level campus and their teachers. So Zach Farina and Marcus Casada, along with their teacher, JT Stadler. So we'll have them come forward. I'd like you to hold off on what you have created, and we'll have you come over here by the stand here by the microphone. Before we show the board what you've created, so kind of hold that as a surprise, we're going to go ahead and read the proclamation from the governor regarding School Board Recognition Month. After I read the proclamation, I have some certificates here from the Washington State School Directors Association that we have for our board members. There's also a special certificate for someone who has completed 5 years of service. And after we get the proclamation and the certificates, then we'll turn it over to our students for their special recognition. Also, I'd like to point out that all the schools in the district have done some nice posters, so you can see those here at the board meeting and behind us. And we appreciate all the students in the district helping us to celebrate School Board Recognition Month. So the proclamation from the governor says, whereas the mission of Washington's public school system is to ensure that all students achieve at high levels and possess the knowledge and skills to be responsible members of a democratic society and enjoy productive and satisfying lives. And whereas Washington's 295 locally elected school board of directors and 9 elected educational service district boards are the core of the public education governance system in our state, serve more than 1.1 million students, and have a combined annual budget of over $15 billion, and employ approximately 120,000 people. And whereas school boards play a crucial role in promoting student learning and achievement by creating a vision, establishing policies and budgets, and setting clear standards for accountability for all involved. And whereas school board directors are directly accountable to residents in their districts and regions, serving as a vital link between members of the community and their schools. And whereas school boards and the educational service districts provide a passionate voice of advocacy for public schools and the welfare of school children. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize school board directors as outstanding public servants and champions for public education. Now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim January 2023 as School Board Recognition Month in Washington State, I encourage all people in our state to join me in this special observance. So let's give our school board a hand. All right, we have some nice certificates here. They're signed by the executive director of the Washington State School Directors Association. And it just says a certificate of recognition, building the future of public education, School Board Recognition Month. So we have President Michael Thorner.
Thank you.
And Vice President Dave Jager.
Thank you.
And Director Mike Meyer. Director Mark Mokel. And Director Mark Strong. Now, WASDA also provides special recognition for milestones. And so this is for 5 years of service. And it says, in recognition of 5 years of board service, Mark Strong, West Valley, with appreciation for your years of valuable service to the children of Washington State. So that's for Mark Strong. All right, now we're going to turn it over. I think Marcus Casada is going to speak a little bit and share exactly what did our students do to provide some special recognition. Also, if your parents, Zach and Marcus, if your parents are here, go ahead and give them some recognition too. Are they there? Right. So go ahead, step up to the mic. If your parents here, go ahead and introduce them for us. No? Okay. All right, and then go ahead and just share what you guys did, what class it was, introduce your teacher, and then kind of go through the specifics of what you did, and then we'll share the outstanding product that you came up with.
So hello everyone. Our teacher here, Mr. Saller, he didn't make us. Yeah. So we made these plaques in pre-engineering, and we have here today with Zach's mom. My parents couldn't make it today. Yeah. So we use them in pre-engineering, and to begin with, we started making these plaques with, first we grabbed a piece of wood and we used a table saw to cut it to 5 inches. And then we used a miter saw to cut them into 10 inches. And then after that, we rounded the edges with a router. And after that, we used a V-carve to plan it out. And after that, we put it into the CNC robot, and that carved it out. And then we stained it and let it dry, and then we were done.
All right, awesome. So let's go ahead and hand out these wonderful plaques that you guys have made.
And these were made by Zach.
Right, awesome.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. That's awesome.
It's so professional.
That's pretty cool. That's really nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow, it's heavy.
All right, let's give those students a hand. Thank you so much. And board members, go ahead and hold up the plaque so the audience can see what a nice job our students did. Aren't those great? So I knew they were working on this project, but I didn't get to see them until tonight. But again, Zach and Marcus, thank you so much. And if there are any other students that helped, tell them thank you as well. All right, great.
Good for a guy that tries to rob my house.
All right, next on the agenda is our program for this evening. We're going to have Geraldine Ashbaugh, our coordinator for state and federal programs. She'll be providing information about the Transitional Bilingual Instructional Program. And we'll go ahead and ask the board to join the audience so we can see the PowerPoint presentation.
Turn me on this microphone. So I'm Geraldine Ashbaugh, State and Federal Coordinator for West Valley School District, and one of the programs that I coordinate, support, and provide guidance for in the district is the Transitional Bilingual Program. And that program serves our students whose first language is not English. It is our students' civil right to have access to English language services. And so through the Transitional Bilingual Program, that's how we accommodate and provide those services. And go. In West Valley School District, we actually have 489 multilingual students, most of them speaking 2 languages, some speaking 3 languages. And several of those students have dual qualifications. So not only are they gifted with multilingual abilities, but we then also have students who are multilingual who are served in special education through an individualized education plan. We have 103 students, migrant students who are bilingual or multilingual, 17 highly capable multilingual students, and 66 of our multilingual students are newcomers. That just means they're within 1 year of being in the program. A handful of those students are new to the country within the last year. For our multilingual students, we do have a number of long-term multilingual students. That means they're in the beginning of their 6th year in program. That's an area of focus for them as we are continually working to improve our program. We would like to see that number decrease some. So 32% of our multilingual students are long-term English learners. 11% of our long-term English learners are on IEPs, and 4% are migrant. It's always a data point I'm looking at trying to work through as we're looking at improving program. The Transitional Bilingual Instructional Program, the goal of that program is to develop language proficiency that enables meaningful access to grade level content and instruction. So again, the student's civil right to meaningful content, meaningful access to content. In state law, the Transitional Bilingual Instructional Program is a program that supplements the basic ed responsibility to those services for students regarding language acquisition. The state TBIP, or Transitional Bilingual Instructional Program, places a strong emphasis on cultural values. Its mission is that English language learners meet state standards and develop language proficiency in an environment where language and cultural assets are recognized as valuable resources for learning. So really tapping into those students' funds of knowledge and what they bring with them into the classroom. We identify our multilingual students through a home language survey. So on the home language survey, if parents indicate they speak another language or the first language spoken in the home was any language other than English, we'll provide the WIDA screener. The WIDA is our English language proficiency assessment. And then if that student qualifies, then we serve them and we progress monitor along the way. Students are required to take the WIDA Access every single year until they test proficient in English. So we have a couple different program types, and I'm not going to go into great length or detail about those program types, but we facilitate a supportive mainstream program model, mostly at the elementary level. So students are receiving services mostly in the classroom, mostly. And then at the secondary level, it's content-based. So it might look like a sheltered English class. Right now, we have a class where students are using a specific curriculum and working in small groups to receive more English language development, designated English language development. So our obligation, we have a dual obligation to our students. That obligation is English language development, so building on their listening, reading, speaking, and writing skills through English language development, and then also meaningful access to content. And that really looks like scaffolds and supports, language stems, paragraph writing samples. Maybe it's pictures to support accessing the content. So those visuals, vocabulary instruction, that kind of thing. We've spent a considerable amount of time and energy in getting the majority of our elementary, even through 8th grade teachers trained in GLAD, which is Guided Language Acquisition. And so we've invested heavily in that, and I'm really proud to say, thanks to Peter, he's put a lot into that in the past, but we have just a handful of teachers that still need that training. So I would consider those teachers to have expertise in English language development instruction. And we also do have several teachers that have EL endorsements as well. So I'm really happy that we have that in our back pocket. This is the multi-tiered system of support that I've been working on for our district. In working closely with OSPI at the state level and then our educational service district here in Yakima or in this region, they're really calling us to do more than GLAD in the classroom. That's important, right? That access to content is important. And more even than just simply English language development, but integrated English language development are those moments that happen throughout the day in the classroom, but they're really asking us to be intentional about small group instruction. And that's designated ELD. That's where we're headed. We're really wanting to, in order to have that career and college readiness and be proficient in English language development, we've got to be very intentional about how we serve our students. With that, we have some new standards. So the WVSD test is a new test. We've always had the English language proficiency assessment, but WVSD is in its second year. We just started the WVSD assessment last year. With that, we've got to continue to provide professional development around those WVSD standards. We're on the very beginning stages of that, and we look to really increase those trainings. We have a wonderful platform called Elevation, where teachers can see their students' scores. They can access the can-do descriptors that are part of those standards, and they can look at how to get them to the next level of English language proficiency. And then just continuing to offer those GLAD trainings. We're very fortunate that we have 2 instructional coaches in our district who are GLAD trainers, so they provide in-house training. We also tap into trainings at the ESD as of currently. And then after-school seminars for sheltered instructional observation protocol and elevation as well. So we've got a lot going on, and we need to continue to grow that base. So our WVSD assessment begins next Monday. It's about an 8-week window, testing window. So all students who are not proficient in English language development will take this assessment. It is mandated that we provide this assessment to those students. So if they are in program, if they're identified as a multilingual student, they will take this assessment. It's quite an undertaking. The prep for that is big. So that starts January 30th and goes all the way through March 24th. It assesses their reading, writing, listening, and speaking in English. And what is wonderful about WVSD is that it's tied to the content. So the standards align with the content standards. So they're going to see academic questions around reading, writing, or reading, math, science, and social studies. So as we continue, I think the thing I'd like to point out here is that in looking at those standards and looking what is needed for our students, we can teach the content, and then the English language development is kind of like a blanket that wraps around that content and provides access to that content. And I encourage teachers to see themselves as language teachers, even when their content is math or science. Students get a score for reading, writing, listening, speaking, and without going into too much depth, they might have a 2 in reading and a 3 in writing and a 5 in speaking. So there might be some domains they're proficient in, but they're not proficient in the other domains yet. Our goal is to get proficiency across those domains before we consider them fluent in English. Exit criteria: kindergartners and first graders need to have a 4 overall, and second graders through 12th graders need to receive a 4.7 in order to exit the program. After they exit, we do progress monitor, or we monitor them for 2 years to make sure they're experiencing success in their content, in their classes. So they don't fall completely off our radar. We look for other ways to support them if necessary. I want to point out, if they test proficient, or when they test proficient, if they test proficient in their native language as well, they have an opportunity to take the STAMP test at the high school and receive the seal of biliteracy. which looks really great on a college application or on a job resume. So if a student tests proficient in English, I always encourage them to take that stamp test in their native language as well. We're working on improving outcomes through family engagement opportunities as well. We do have a targeted audience of or a targeted set of students that we have family liaisons who make weekly contact with those students and those families to support their success in school. And then we have recently started monthly multilingual family nights for grades 6 through 12 students as well, and really working on building those connections with families and helping them support their students in school. We had a great one last month. So next up for teachers, we want to continue to offer those GLAD, SIOP, and elevation trainings and just really work on building capacity, increase the common understandings around how do they support and scaffold for their students in order to make that content accessible and improve their English language development skills, and then extend our WIDA training to all teachers. So not just what are the strategies, but also what are the standards? What does it look like to go from a 3 in listening to a 4 in listening? And how do I get the student there? And then just the little quote here, the powerful gift of bilingualism. It links families, promotes creativity, increases focus, activates multitasking, enables worldly views, stimulates the brain, promotes brain health, opens the mind, and enhances communication skills. And I've been practicing my Spanish on Duolingo, so I'm hoping to be bilingual at some point. You guys have any questions for me? Mark?
For question and answer, why don't we have the board come back up so the microphones will pick up your question. And maybe we can turn the lights back up. Thank you, Geraldine, for the presentation, and then we'll have a little time for question and answer here with the board.
Okay. Huh?
We'll go ahead. Just one question, Geraldine. On the minimum score, is that an average, or is that you have to have a minimum of like 4, I think it was, for each one? So in other words, could a student get like a 2 score on reading and then a 6 and something else and it averages, or do they have to meet that minimum for each one of those to be, I guess, considered proficient?
Right. So if you have a student, like a 2nd through 12th grade student with a 4.7 overall, they're going to have a 5 or higher than a 5 in one of those domains to be proficient.
Okay.
So if I had 4s across the board, obviously I wouldn't have a score of 4.7.
Right.
So we have had students who have had even a 5 overall, but one of their domains was below a 4 and they were not yet proficient.
Oh.
So it's really tricky, but we just as teachers need to know, what domains they're not proficient in yet and really be able to target our instruction to that. So, but yeah, it's tough. We're hoping to see an increase in those proficient scores this year and in the years coming as we improve our services all the time.
And just one other follow-up question, more of a curiosity than a real question here, is just which one of those 3 areas between the reading, writing, and speaking is the most difficult either to teach or for the student to learn?
Reading and writing are definitely, when you think about language acquisition, the first thing a baby learns to do is to listen and then to speak, right? So if you think about that in regards to second language learning, it's the same thing. We listen for a while, then we learn to speak, and then reading and writing come later. And reading and writing comes later in second language acquisition as well. I do have that data. I could certainly send you the areas in which we are better at than others if you'd like me to send you a graphic.
I think
can-
that also explains our long-term English language learners, where long-term, maybe they're listening and speaking is at proficient, but still the reading and writing
Right.
is an area that we need to focus on.
I would agree. Thank you.
Well,
Good
thank you.
questions. Yep.
Ms. Ashbaugh, when I was watching on the WIDA testing, and I don't remember the dates that were up there, but it seemed like a pretty prolonged period of time. And my personal experience with those kind of examinations or tests, if you will, is that they're pulled out of your classroom for quite a bit of time over an extended period of time.
Right.
Yeah.
We have an 8-week window because we have 500 students,
Mhm,
almost
right.
500 students. So we will test at the high school level. Students who are in an ELD class, we will be testing during their class period. So that's a little more than half of those students. And students who do not have an ELD class will be tested 2 half days. So a full day total at the high school level. Elementary students are, I do like first grade, 9 to 10 every day for that week. So they miss an hour of class every day for about a week. So yeah, it's 4 domains. We always leave a little extra time for makeups in case the student was absent.
Mhm.
But it can be extensive. I agree.
That was my first question, was how can you possibly test 489 kids in 40 days?
It's tough.
Yeah.
We do have some great people on staff as well as a few that we bring in to help administer.
66 newcomers, that doesn't mean anything to me. How many newcomers last year or the year before? Are we growing, or are we getting less? Are we staying constant? What do you think?
Newcomers to program, I really can't tell you the numbers because for previous years, because I didn't have this amazing platform Elevation where I really tracked how many were new to the program. So I don't have that on the top of my head. I can find out for you. Newcomers to the country, I'd say we're about the same as we have been consistently in the last few years.
Growing, but we're staying pretty consistent.
Our multilingual numbers are definitely growing. I feel like, and I don't have a solid number in my head either, but I feel like we were like 430 last year, ish. Again, I could get back to you on that if you want a solid number. So I do think our numbers are growing in that aspect.
Lastly, when you talk about encouraging the high school seniors to get the diploma for bilingual along with regular diploma, do we have kids going through our program who have the opportunity to come back and be parapros? Are we grabbing these seniors that have that bilingual thing and saying, if you stay with us?
I think we have in fact, I feel like we might have just hired a transitional bilingual parapro who was a West Valley graduate at the high school level. So I think intentionality is my word of the year. And so I think that being intentional about that would be a really great idea.
So that's a key to bringing just more diversity into the district, is hiring
Right.
more bilingual staff. And if there are homegrown people, they tend to stay in their own district.
Right. I think I might just add, Dave, that it's always wonderful to have mirrors and windows when you have staff that look like the students working with the students. That's always like a goal, right? So that's a fabulous asset. But I also, I think I want to just clarify that you can teach English language development and not be bilingual as well, right? So the teachers who are monolingual, English only, have a lot to add to the growth and development of our bilingual students. But obviously at the same time, having someone who looks like you and has your same culture is definitely an asset as well.
Who's been there?
Yeah,
Who's been
yeah.
there? My last question, how many, in the bilingual program, it sounds like these kids, I always thought there was a limit of how many years they could be in the program. Is there not a limit anymore?
No limit. We keep them until they test proficient, and that is federal guidance, that we serve them. It's actually, their civil right to have those services. And I really look at that as I look at multilingual instruction as a service rather than an intervention, right? It's their civil right. We're obligated to provide.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
Are we only talking about Spanish and English, or do we have other languages?
Oh,
that we're
great
working?
question. We actually have 8 languages in the district. And I anticipated, I forgot to put that slide in the presentation. So we actually serve Arabic, Chinese, English multilingual learners, which is a whole nother thing that I'd have to take time to explain. Korean, Punjabi, Spanish, Tagalog, which I believe is Filipino, and Vietnamese. So there's a lot of students in the district. The primary second language or first language is Spanish.
Do we have any Yakima language?
Native.
students, yeah, in our school
We
district?
do, and a lot of times those students qualify under our Title III program, which is our federal program. And we serve them similarly in some ways around language and literacy. And I did not filter any data around that, but I think the majority of them probably put English as their first language. And so those students show up a little differently.
Right.
They show up more as at-risk students. So not every Native or Alaskan Indian student is automatically in program or screened in a program. They have to really show as academically at risk.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as the stamp test, what grade level are you starting? Is that a high school only, or is that down in the middle
I
school?
believe it's
where
only high school. Yeah, and I don't do that testing, but I believe I've only seen it at the high school.
And are they, if they acquire the seal of biliteracy, are they getting some high school credit along with that?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And just a great thing to be able to add to any resume or college application, and it just makes students very marketable.
Right. With
So-
core 24, I'm sure
Yeah.
that's helpful for some of those students.
Yes. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right, thank you, Geraldine. Appreciate the presentation.
Okay. Moving on to item 7, public comment of non-discussion items. We have a couple people that have signed in to address the board. Again, this is a public comment session. The board will receive the comments, and as is our practice, Dr. Finch will respond to the extent that there needs to be response at the next school board meeting. First on the list tonight is Peter Marinacci.
Good evening. Tonight I'd like to comment on 2 areas. The first is consideration of modifications of the, is this working okay? Conflicts of interest policy. In advance, given an agenda was put out in tonight's meeting, I'd like to thank Dr. Finch for being responsive to inquiries on this topic. Thank you. One member of the board has a beneficial interest in the outcome of the collective bargaining agreement and potentially the budget at large. This past year, that board member responsibly recused himself from voting on the collective bargaining agreement. Thank you. The same board member was absent from the vote of the most recent budget. Whether coincidentally or intentional, you may want to consider in the future votes that this board member not vote on the budget. There is a potential and perception that members of the community would view any dialogue or vote on a future budget by this party as potentially impacting the outcome, which could be a negotiating point in future collective bargaining agreement. Doesn't mean it's happening, right? Not making an accusation. Thus, for the sake of avoiding any concern, avoiding or recusing oneself from the budget vote might be a prudent move. Consider it. Separately, the policy is cross-referenced with policy 60/20/30, relations with vendors. There's a statement in that policy that reads, quote, "The district will make purchasing decisions based upon objectivity and will not be influenced by friendships or other personal relationships." This is a very good statement. However, the policy does not specifically call out board members, administrators, or staff to state if they have such a relationship, if potential business is before the district, and if they have influence on that decision. As an abundance of caution, I would suggest that policy 6230 be modified with specific instructions that should any business come up before the district whereby such a relationship exists, the board member, administrator, staff person would state as such and recuse as appropriate. So again, just a suggestion you might want to consider. With all these matters, while there is a law, and you may certainly have school council note that is minimally required, I would posit we should look at the most transparent and highest level of standard possible. The second area I'd like to comment on is the area of travel. Not necessarily specific to what is on today's agenda, but just more broadly speaking. Can we carefully review the travel administrators and staff, one who regularly views the log? There's been travel to many places across the nation, that in some cases include 2 or 3 representatives. Are the benefits of the travel captured post-visit and provide value to our students? How is it measured? One outgrowth of the era of the virus is many private sector companies are looking to justify the necessity of going out of town meetings. Cannot some of these meetings be done via Zoom? Rather to necessarily cut back on travel, I like to see more travel enrichment opportunities for our students. In addition to sports events and programs like DECA, which I wholeheartedly support, are there not more opportunities such as Apple Valley Science Camp open to more students, more museums, possibly visits to local businesses, where liability is not a concern? We certainly have a rich agricultural community. Just thinking of ideas out loud. And for travel that needs to take place and it's been deemed to be justified, is there a way that we can show the community that it's adding value to our students? Ironically, I saw him arriving today. And I remember when he went to the West Side, he came back with a report of why it was valuable. If you can show the community the value of these visits and not potentially looking like a boondoggle, it will have an impact. Put it on the website. Thanks for your time, gentlemen.
Mr. Marinacci, can I ask you a clarifying question, please?
You certainly may.
I'm scrolling because I'm pulling up tonight's proposed conflict of interest policy. Can you restate what it is that you're requesting relative? It's not really a clarification, but maybe just a restatement. What the second part about the vendors and the personal interest? Could you restate that just a little slower for me, please?
I'm trying to be accommodating to the limited time nature.
I understand. I just wanted to make sure that I was
bet.
understanding.
And by the way, don't take anything I'm saying personally, any of you. I'm actually thinking of you guys when I make these statements. So even though it was directed to potentially one individual, that was not the intent. To answer your question, so if you look at policy 6230, there's a clause in there that says, hey, the district does not make decisions based upon personal relationships. That's awesome. What's not stated in there is, and I don't know, it could be listed in some other policy, specific instructions to staff, to administrators, to school board members that if you are part of a process of procurement, you have influence on that decision, you must speak up. I have it at my firm and it's very crystal clear. And you actually have to sign a document each year that you understand what the policy is. Does that make more sense?
Yes.
And just for
Thank you.
just for clarification, the revision is to policy 1610 this evening that's on the agenda. And Mr. Marinacci and I were discussing the cross-reference that is on that policy. The cross-reference is to the one that he just mentioned, policy 6230, which is not for revision, but something that Mr. Marinacci was recommending that we take a look at.
Exactly.
Thank you. Sorry to make you repeat that. I just wanted to make sure that I was hearing
I'm
correctly.
just honored I'm actually asked a question and I can speak longer than you wanted to.
Your 3 minutes is done.
Okay. Ryan Matthews is next.
Thank you. Just 2 quick comments. Number one, in regards to the first reading, I was bored and read them all. I would ask that somebody give those a little bit of diligence on the back end to add the missing periods and make some other kind of grammatical revisions. So track changes is hard. So when someone does the accept all and moves forward, it'll be more clear. Item number 2, and again, this is not directed at Dr. Finch at all. As a member of the board, I would encourage, as a member of the community, I would encourage the board to bring a superintendent's contract, both from a public perspective, a public awareness perspective, and potentially in a first reading, second reading kind of format to be brought ahead of the meeting in which the board intends to take action. There have been some things in the past that have gone on, and at those times, the superintendent's contract was not easily accessible to members of the community. And frankly, I don't know if the contract being considered makes any modifications or is absolutely, copy and paste from the approved superintendent manual issued by WASD or the state. I just don't know those things. And so there's been no opportunity from a community perspective to, I guess, kind of have an understanding of what those contracts look like, to have perhaps an opportunity for discussion with the community. And again, to kind of maybe more adopt a first reading, second reading kind of concept when it comes to the superintendent's contract. The superintendent is your employee, your single employee. Obviously, community members can always walk up and tap you on the shoulder and say, I really like or I don't like about the superintendent. So it's not as though you're not getting feedback in a private fashion. But again, just think it might be a valuable element of kind of transparency for that contract to be out and to have some public discussion. I know that the board goes through private discussions as you're permitted to do in your executive sessions with respect to the evaluation of the superintendent, et cetera. So that was just two thoughts for you.
Okay, those were the only two people that signed up to speak. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board? Okay, I will close the public comment period. Next up is item 8, approval of consent agenda. In the consent agenda, as usual, are approval of minutes, approval of vouchers and payroll, financial reports, approval of employment contracts, approval of resignations, retirements, and separations. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda unless there are any questions.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
It has been moved to approve the consent agenda. I will call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries 5-0. Next up is approval of travel requests. There are 5. I would like to discuss number 1.
Good.
If that's okay. When I was reviewing this, and as somebody who does a fair amount of air travel, and this being an issue that I've raised in the past, I don't have a problem with the folks going to the conference. However, I looked last night on my own. It is not, unfortunately, cost effective to fly out of Pasco. Frankly, it's not cost effective. It's because of what I'm observing in my own personal travels that I have to do for my work. Flying out of the Tri-Cities with this cut to 1 flight a day out of Yakima has basically made it that Alaska has risen the price dramatically. Whereas, frankly, with a similar schedule that's frankly better for the staff and less time, they are better off, and it saves the district money to fly from Seattle. So I find myself, it's not really so I find myself, and I asked Dr. Finch this question, I think we can approve the travel request, but I would really like us to see a better choice on the airfare situation, because they're flying on Alaska. They've chosen to fly out of the Tri-Cities. If I was looking at it correctly, it would save the district almost $1,000 by not flying out of the Tri-Cities.
I certainly appreciate this. And
I should
we
have
have- no,
emailed
it's
you
okay.
ahead of the meeting. I apologize, Dr. Finch.
yeah, we'll continue to look at these. We have sent the message previously. It looks like this is a new employee, so maybe they didn't get the message that was sent earlier. And we can make the change. They should not have purchased the airfare until approval, so we'll have opportunity to make a change on those logistics.
So we could still go ahead and approve, but with the understanding that
Correct.
I'll
Yes.
just say we'll do a better job on the airfare.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. That was all I had as far as travel requests. If anybody has anything else.
Great.
Okay. So we can take the travel requests as a group, and I'll entertain a motion to do so.
I move to approve the travel requests 1 through 5.
Thank you, Mr. Jager. So approval of travel requests has been moved. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign? Motion carries 5-0. Next up is item 9A, approval of policy additions and revisions, first reading.
So all these are
Yes, thank you,
recommendations
Dr. Finch.
from the Washington State School Directors Association model policy. So we're using the straight language there. The one that might be of interest is the student search of students and student privacy. Basically, they've taken a lot of that information and put it into procedure. So I already met with our high school principal and we've updated procedure as appropriate. So that's already been updated, and basically all of this information here is from the WASDA model policy.
Just one item of comment relative to the conflicts of interest policy. And in response to Mr. Marinacci, I obviously took a close look at all of these prior to the meeting tonight. It seems to me, and I could be off, but either I've read in the law itself or in our policies somewhere, and it's not in the one that's before the board. I'm fairly certain that I've read somewhere that it is I believe it's stated that it's a legal obligation of the board to do exactly what Mr. Marinacci is suggesting. I just can't put my finger on that right this second because I wasn't, anticipating his comment, but I was fairly certain I've read that. What I guess I would say in further comment is that we can approve the first reading, and maybe Dr. Finch could do a little bit of investigation as to the requirements of the requirement of the obligation or duty of the school board member to disclose when they have a beneficial interest or potential conflict of interest. Again, I'm fairly certain I've read something somewhere that imposes that obligation on us already. I know that it's not in the first reading of 1660. So that would be my request between now and the
Certainly.
second reading.
Yep, we can certainly do that.
Would anybody else have any other comments individually, or if not, we can take these as a group?
Just kind of thinking about this, looking at the line items that we deal with on our budget, I would think that each one of us would have a conflict of interest as we move down through those line items with the amount of vendors that we're using either locally or wherever. So where I like the idea, I just wonder if that's how daunting of a task that is. So I'm just thinking out loud.
I think it's based on your definition of conflict of interest. I mean, how wide do you want it to be? And I think Peter can check into that. How wide is our conflict of interest? Maybe I cannot vote on anything because my son's a special ed director. Peter, can you look into this more and talk to us about it?
Yes, certainly. And that's one of the reasons we have legal counsel for the district. So we'll get an actual lawyer's.
You know, and I wouldn't even be opposed
Input on
to, you know, our legal counsel providing some, maybe during a study session, providing us some training on best practices
That's a good idea.
relative to our obligations. I don't think that's a bad idea at all.
Yeah.
I mean, we take training on open public meetings and those things. That wouldn't be a bad idea for us to talk about best practices in those areas for school board members.
I agree. Excellent suggestion.
After hearing the conversation, I would move to approve policy additions, first reading or revisions,
Mhm.
1 through 9, rather than the long numbers.
Okay. Mr. Meyer has made a motion approving action items 9B, items 1 through 9, first readings of the policies listed in the agenda. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor for first reading, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. The motion carries on approval of first reading of the listed policies 5-0. Next up is the approval of the superintendent's contract. Let me ask the board the question if we want to do a first reading, second reading approach to this. I can briefly summarize effectively what are the changes in Dr. Finch's contract, if that would be helpful. Effectively, when Dr. Finch was hired by the school board 2 years ago, the contract that is before the board is the same contract as now with but then, and so we hired him with that contract, and then the following revisions have been made. We have revised his term. The term of the contract that is before the school board is 3 years. The original term was 2. Secondly, in the term provision, we added some language that says that on an annual basis, we are going to do contract maintenance with Dr. Finch about the terms of his contract. That's consistent with our collective bargaining agreements. That we would annually do a review of the terms of his contract. Those terms would not be binding on either party unless and until amendments to the contract are agreed to in writing and through the process that we would have to ratify in the open meeting. Thirdly, we have revised his pay. There is in terms of the dollars, it is consistent from a dollars amount for the salary and total compensation. It is consistent with what we have done with the other bargaining groups ahead of Dr. Finch, and actually just a few tenths of a percent overall less on an annualized basis through the term of the contract. Let's see here. We also added, consistent with board policy, we've updated the contract to include Juneteenth as a holiday to Dr. Finch's contract. What else am I missing?
Medical.
Oh, yes, thank you. I was thinking of that as I was going through it, and I knew I was forgetting one thing. In Dr. Finch's previous contract, he had a stipend for additional medical expenses that we that has been eliminated, but then considered as part of his overall compensation. So in the past with the previous superintendent, many other superintendents throughout the state have various stipends for cell phones and travel and medical or things of this nature. And this school board, since I've been on the school board, has eliminated those over time and have effectively said, no, we're going to roll this into your salary so that there aren't all of these extra one-offs that inflate the total compensation. So in looking at the contract, it's got the salary, it's got the compensation. This is what it is, and we've removed or eroded away these extra stipends. So yeah, that's effectively the summary of the contract. I will say whenever we've approved the superintendent's contract, in the past, we've always gone through the same process that we're going through now. It requires board action during the open public meeting. I don't know exactly how to respond to the comment that Mr. Matthews made, that it was difficult to find. All I can tell you is at least since I've been on the school board, we're going through the same process that we have always gone, which is to make it part of the agenda, discuss it, and take action. So that's a summary of what we've done with Dr. Finch's contract. Certainly, it's a public document, and I think all of us up here, it's not intended to be a secret at all, because he is of course our employee, and so we'll strive to do better with that in the future. So with that, did I leave anything out on the summary of the contract? I don't know if we want to. I don't know if we want to take a first reading, second reading approach.
I think your summary was sufficient. We do have a January 31st deadline, and we wouldn't have time for a second reading, but I do believe that your detailed summary was sufficient.
Yeah.
Is there a vehicle, Mr. Thorner, to do a first and second reading before the deadline? I kind of think, just in the interest of transparency, it's not necessarily a bad idea to do this. As Mr. Matthews has pointed out, just if everyone doesn't really understand it or doesn't know about it or doesn't see it, it's kind of, I don't know, if we just move forward right now, perhaps it doesn't serve us the best to do it that way. In the future, we may be able to adopt a different approach where it's a little bit more transparent, but is there a way to do that within the time frame of the papers?
Unless I'm mistaken, Mr. President, our next board meeting is not until February 14th, and we've got January 31st as a deadline to get this accomplished.
Right. Right.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just wondering, since the question was raised, maybe it's something we can make sure we do the next time around, if that's the case. But I like the idea of the transparency. I think it just serves us better in the long run in everything we do.
I think next time around, it'll be easier because we got a 3-year contract and we just need to look at maybe updates. This time it was a major, and that's why it took us so darn long to get the thing decided. We just were decided on this contract about a week and a half ago. And I think we've gone long enough for Dr. Finch. I think he deserves to have a contract by the end of the month. I'm
asking this question. I'm not yet proposing it, but what would the board have objection to, before we take action, receiving any further public comment on the superintendent's contract from anybody here tonight?
Sure. Not at all.
Okay. I'll make a modification to the agenda that we will have a special public comment period only to discuss or only to take public comment on the approval of the superintendent's contract. So I'll open it up if that's okay with the rest of the board. I don't think we need a motion for that. So I'll open it up for public comment at this time for receipt by the board.
Is it still 3 minutes?
I'm sorry?
Is it still 3 minutes for this?
Well, we would hope that we would be respectful of the time, but I'm not keeping track.
I appreciate Mr. Thorner's summary of the contract changes that provides valuable perspective that we don't have, right, otherwise. So I would encourage you to continue forward with the item on the agenda as currently drafted. Again, I know that you all have spent a tremendous amount of time making this decision, as evidenced by the 5 or 6 executive sessions. You guys have spent time, I think, doing other things and this. So yeah, I would encourage the board to proceed forward with the approval of the contract.
If it makes anybody feel any better, the summary that I just provided was what I was planning to provide ahead of even the comment, but because, to bring everybody else along for the ride, but thank you. Any other public comment? Go ahead. Mr. Marinacci.
Mr. Thorner, just a quick question. It was mentioned a January 31st deadline.
That was in the previous contract.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yep. I'll close the public comment period, and I'll just wind up the public comment period by saying that I agree with Mr. Jager that we need to continue to highlight those areas and explain and talk to our public about what it is that we have done. Maybe in retrospect, I could have included a summary, a written summary, or a red line version of the contract, and I'll take responsibility for that. So I'll remember that in the future.
I think we also need to think about, we may not be sitting on this board, these current members. So passing along that information to current board members when we get to the stage where we're dealing with superintendent contract needs to be passed along.
Right. Okay. So if we're comfortable in moving forward, I would entertain a motion to approve Dr. Finch's contract starting on July 1, 2023.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mokel. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries 3-0, and I'm very pleased to.
Three.
What did it?
5-0.
Did I say 3-0? Oh, 5-0. Jeez, 5-0. I was already ahead of myself.
All we needed was 3.
All we needed was 3. I just wanted to wish Dr. Finch congratulations, and we're very pleased that we could come to an agreement.
I'd like to give him applause.
Item 10, items arising. Hearing none. Okay. Item 11, reports.
There's all included, all the written reports of administrative, enrollment, safety, travel log, and high school ASB.
Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Superintendent's report was in writing and just had a nice schedule of all the upcoming events that board members are welcome to attend and welcome to do the greeting or opening at some of our early learning workshop. If you're available, just let me know and we can have you attend and provide the welcome to our participants. Last early learning workshop we had over 100 participants from throughout the region. So we're back doing those in person, and our next one is Thursday, February 23rd.
Great. Item 13, board reports, board development.
I would just like to say, I noticed all these signs. I just didn't realize it till I sat on the other side that they're right there in front of us. So I just want to say thank you to those who participated in developing those or preparing them, and the recognition for the board. We do notice and appreciate, just the recognition from you all. So thank you for that. I just think it's worth mentioning.
Thank you.
And Mr. Thorner spoke briefly at the start of the meeting about the emails that we received from students today in the leadership class. I know that it was National Give a Compliment Day, so that may have been tied in with it. But it is always nice to be appreciated. And I as well am going to be responding to those students.
Thank you. I think my only report tonight is that I wasn't even, Mr. Matthews and I didn't even communicate about this, but I had in my notes to talk a little bit about executive sessions and why have we been having them a lot lately, and I was going to use this time even ahead of Mr. Matthews' comments. As you may or may not know, the school board has a number of essential functions, and one of them is the evaluation and supervision of our one and only employee, and that is the superintendent. By law, we are required to evaluate the superintendent twice per year, once in the middle of the year and once at the conclusion of the school year. And if you look over time at prior board agendas in years past, not just now, that typically in January and February, there are a lot of executive sessions about the performance of a public employee. And this year is no different. And then when we get to June and July, we'll go through that exercise again. The mid-year evaluation for the superintendent is a less formal process than the year end, but nevertheless, it still takes a lot of time where the board hears from Dr. Finch. We ask questions about the things that he's sharing about his own self-evaluation. The board will deliberate about its own impressions, bring Dr. Finch back for questions. So that is an interactive process that takes, frankly, hours. And you will be seeing in the next couple of weeks some special study sessions that we're going to have the next 2 Mondays at 7:30 at the district office, where we'll start in the one room and then convene in Dr. Finch's office to continue our deliberations on his mid-year evaluation. So that's standard operating procedure for the board. Again, we're not really required to say much more than this is about the performance of a public employee, but I think it's important to highlight that that's what we're doing, is that we are doing our duty to evaluate, supervise, and just as important, provide what we hope is important and valuable feedback to Dr. Finch as he helps lead this district. So I thank you for your indulgence relative to that, and just wanted to share that with the group here tonight.
And if I could just say, we started with board appreciation. We can end here with board appreciation, because the board is very involved and very much a voice for the community. and a very rigorous process that we go through on analyzing where we're at as a district and what's our expectation for the future. And I just appreciate all engagement from all 5 board members because it's obvious their commitment to our schools and our kids and our community. And then that comes through in those conversations. So just again, appreciation for our board for their commitment and their service. So thank you.
Okay. Any other reports or development items? All right. Hearing none, it is 8:10. We'll adjourn the meeting. We have some things to sign before you leave.
All right.